Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr.
Good morning, Leila. Let's start with these day newspapers. Lead story, Supreme Court penalizes APC lawyers, dismisses request to review Bayelsa judgment. Orders Afe Babalola Olanipekun to pay opposition party, governor, deputy, 16 million naira. PDP, Dewey, Dixon, Hill, verdict. Other newspapers have similar story from that Supreme Court pronouncement yesterday. And the Guardian newspaper puts it this way: Supreme Court's verdict on Bayelsa is final. Justices rejected request to review judgment. Alleged move meant to desecrate judiciary. Lawyers to pay 30 million fine on applicants. Now, the Nation newspaper, same story. Supreme Court, our decision final, no matter how anybody feels. Bayelsa verdict final for all ages. Court slams fine on Afe Olanipekun, while the Nigerian Tribune, as Supreme Court finally dashes APC's hope in Bayelsa, all eyes on Imo. And of course, there's a quote there from Justice Amina Oige. I feel like shedding tears that senior counsels in this case will ever bring this kind of applications during my lifetime. This court is the final court of the land, and its decisions are final for all ages, so as to ensure certainty in law. Where we saw this coming, Ruben, yes. And we prescribed on this program that there should be some heavy penalty to deter lawyers who will think that there's another round of windfall on election cases by asking Supreme Court to review itself. And now we have
this.
Yes.
Always said, look, well, litigants can go all the way to Supreme Court. They can go back and forth. Lawyers will always make their money. But what is instructive in this is that, the Supreme Court went out of its way to sanction counsel. And, the counsel involved, these are, on their own institutions within the legal profession. Chief Afe Babalola and Chief Wole Olanipekun. I mean, these are the leading lights of the legal profession. And I think the Supreme Court decided to go that way in asking them to pay personally the penalty that had been ordered in order to send a message to junior lawyers to say that, look,
not only junior, other senior lawyers, everybody, because they get this kind of briefs.
That if the Supreme Court can sanction these very senior persons, then it means that anybody at all that goes before Supreme Court may even get a harsher a penalty, because in the view of the justices, they consider the application vexatious, frivolous. And Justice Amina Ogi made the point that there must be an end to litigation.
Exactly.
And indeed, if the Supreme Court has to review every case that it has handled, there will probably be no end to it, and that could have implications for the judiciary. And also, it's not just about the certainty that the Justice Ogi talked about. It's also about the fact that if the ordinary litigant loses trust and confidence in the APC court,
yes.
Exactly.
Then, of course,
the justice
system will be violated.
Yes, we had a guest on this program a couple of days ago who said that, don't worry about that. The judiciary, the Supreme Court knows how to protect itself.
Yes.
And I think that is what we have just seen.
But you see, the next case that you mentioned, the Imo case,
yes.
I think that was adjourned till March 2.
Yeah.
Well, the PDP, in hailing the decision of the Supreme Court in Bayelsa, in the Bayelsa case, is also saying that, well, they are optimistic about the Imo case because the facts of the matter are different. But I think if you look at the fine points raised by Justice Amina Ogi, we may already begin to project that even on March 2nd, the Supreme Court will still, insist on the finality of his decision.
The only fact of the matter is that
I want to believe that the Supreme Court will look at every such request on its merit.
On its merit, yes. Certainly.
But the point I also want to add that fine to the lawyers is to also tell lawyers that they are in a better position to advise their clients whether there is merit, not to look at
whichever position they're in. I mean, I think you can't mimic the apex courts. You can't put such a detrimental tone on it. That's the kind of protection it has to give itself, whichever way, regardless of the lawyers and their clients. You know.
Now let's just move on.
Well, although I would have, loved to see the actual response of their lordships to the points raised by the applicants. Because both Chief Afe Babalola and Chief Ola Olanipeku, they raised certain points, about jurisdiction and about, the decision arrived at by the Supreme Court. But I guess, that response, when we see the full text of the ruling, that would probably be addressed. No, because that can be a contribution again to our...
No, for the Supreme Court to describe their application as
lacking in merit.
Frivolous. Underline our frivolous. What merit are you looking
for
in their positions? The Supreme Court does not use words like that just for the sake of it. They must have been out of point, ab initio. So let's move on to other newspapers with other stories. The Vanguard newspaper, insurgency, depressed soldier shoots 7, kills self, 4 dead, 3 others critically injured. We're investigating circumstances that led to the incident. Army says 5 soldiers were shot, 2 with 2 deaths. ISWAP attacks Chibok village, abducts head of civilian JTF, others. Buhari asks military to deal mercilessly with ISWAP terrorists.
This is extremely sad news, and it raises so many questions.
The military described the soldier simply went berserk. Of course, this paper is saying depressed soldier. What could be responsible for such depression in the theater of war? Well, we've also heard of criticisms of soldiers staying too long in the battlefront instead of being rotated as is usual in military practice. Some of these soldiers staying too long in the battlefront. Whether this is the case, I want to believe the military high command will investigate this and deal with this kind of issue.
Well, I think it's a very sad development that, a soldier not in a combat situation will now turn the gun on his own colleagues and eventually on himself. Colonel Sagi Musa, the Army spokesman, gave 2 indications in the statement that he issued. One, that this could simply be a case of the soldier going berserk, or it could be a case of poor visibility, because at the time the incident occurred, he probably, mistook the people that he shot maybe for enemies. However, we're told that the military hierarchy will investigate the matter and arrive, at the truth. But the other leg of it is a third point, which you already alluded to. It was said that this particular corporal, who killed others and himself, had been at the war front for a very long time, not going home, and that he got, a report from home that his wife was already, attending to another man, was committing adultery, and that infuriated him and led to this violent act. And those who came up with that theory said that, look, when these soldiers are on the war front for too long, their families are abandoned. Some of them don't even recognize their children again, and that we need to go back to the standard practice where, as you said, they should be rotated. It should not be a permanent posting. But whatever it is, I guess, after the investigation, the Nigerian Army should be able to learn 1 or 2 lessons from this, because this is not the first time it will happen. It even was the case in the past that the troops opened fire on their commander, and the guy had to take to his heels. So we've had many cases like this, and it shows again they need to pay attention to the welfare of the troops.
And it's so important because it cannot be stressed enough, the importance of the mental health of not just soldiers, but every single Nigerian in this country. We do not pay enough attention to mental health. The second someone is depressed, we're giving every single excuse for their depression. We're looking towards blaming the devil. We're looking for things that are so nonsensical because we don't want to accept mental health problems. The welfare of our soldiers is far too important for our soldiers not to be in constant therapy, for our soldiers not to have constant mental health checks. If not, these results are going to happen. Why won't he be depressed to the point of, I want to take the life of myself and others? If he has spent years on the front line, if he hasn't seen his family, if he doesn't even recognize himself anymore, you know, it's so scary to think that we don't even think about the welfare of our soldiers as human beings, let alone as human beings we should even want to protect more than just that because they're doing everything to protect us and save this country. It's really sad.
You cannot be more correct, Leila.
Thanks, Doctor.
Yes. Well, let's look at the Punch newspaper, the lead story. Catholic bishops to government. Failure to arrest culprits shows federal government's insincerity on killings. Yes, the Catholic bishop issued that statement yesterday to mark the Ash Wednesday, which marked the beginning of the 40-day Lenten period. And they said that the federal government had not shown willingness to, and the spate of killings by Boko Haram and the insurgents, as well as killings by herdsmen, that the government is not doing enough.
Well, I mean, the Catholic bishops, they've been very consistent. They've consistently issued statements to criticize government and to advise government to take the challenge of insecurity, you know, more seriously. Yesterday was Ash Wednesday, and the Catholic bishops had directed that members should wear black. And there were processions in Sokoto, in Abia State, and in other parts of the country, just to remind government again that security remains a major problem for Nigerians in all forms. But we'll take a short break, Emmanuel Efeni, then we'll return to the headlines when we're back. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still joined by Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni for the latest headlines of today. Over to you.
Yes, if we were on the Catholic bishop's statement, on the spate of killings and their view, which is very well known, that the government is not doing enough to apprehend killers, whether they are Boko Haram, terrorists, ISWAP insurgents, or headers. And, of course, recently we saw what happened in Delta State, which, up till as we speak, nobody has been arrested or been brought to book. Rather, those communities are even seem to be under siege because recently they were crying out over in the last couple of days that the soldiers were even threatening to wipe out the village. So when
in Uweru Kingdom. Ughelli local government.
Yes, Ughelli North local government area of Delta State. So what the Catholic clerics are saying is also yet another wake-up call on government to do the needful, and they have just used this occasion of Ash Wednesday to restate the position they have made very clearly over time about the killings and insecurity in the country. If we move to other subjects, other newspapers, still the same insecurity. Daily Sun, Chibok under attack. ISWAP strikes community, abducts civilian JTF boss, others. Buhari orders military to rejig strategy. And if you read that report, insurgents believed to be members of the Islamic State of West Africa group yesterday attacked Bombula community in Chibok local government area of Borno State, leaving behind tears and sorrow. The insurgents who reportedly struck by 4 a.m. when the community was asleep, abducted Mohammed Abba, head of the civilian Joint Task Force Vigilante Group. So,
Wow.
These terrorists still having a free reign, as it were. And recall that the governor, former governor of Borno State, who was saying that the tactics of having this super camp, yes, has not really worked, because what it meant is that, yes, while the soldiers are well protected in a super camp where the insurgents or terrorists cannot easily attack them, but the result is that these terrorists now have free reign. They can attack communities at will and get away before the soldiers will leave their super camps and try to reach this scene that already committed so much atrocities, abduct who they want to abduct, burn houses, kill those they can kill, and they just zap away.
Well, I mean, what is more depressing about it is that this happens all the time.
Yeah.
But when, the president there says the military should rejig a strategy, I think we've heard that so many times, either strategy or architecture. But what all of this means is that government just needs to scale up in terms of its efforts to ensure the security of lives and property. Because when you reduce it to the barest minimum, we're talking about human lives being lost on a regular basis, and the people appearing defenseless in virtually every case.
You see, I'm sure by the time we get into March, the figure of Nigerians killed in February alone will come out. In January, 320 Nigerians killed by either headers, ISWAP, Boko Haram.
And those are the reported cases.
Those are reported cases.
Exactly, that's what's scary. Those are the reported cases,
So we're talking about the lives of Nigerians being cut short at will.
I just don't see how we can say we've beaten insurgency or tackled insurgency when these are still our daily headlines and people are still dying like this. This is insurgency.
Okay. If we look at the New Telegraph newspaper, the lead story, what we've discussed before, judgment review, hope dims for Ihedioha, Zamfara, APC. Well, like you said, if you look at the fine lines of that declaration from the Supreme Court, those from Imo and Zamfara should not smile so soon. Well, above the masthead, the National Electricity Regulation Commission suspends electricity tariff hike. Regulator discos battle over estimated bill capping. Well, so much pronouncements on the electricity, this electricity sector, but in all this, there seems to be no improvement. Whether you are capping estimated billing, whether you are suspending tariff hike, the report across the nation is that there seems to be a degeneration in the supply of electricity to families across the country.
Well, I mean, a big concern is the fact that there doesn't seem to be enough quality communication between the regulator and other stakeholders and the DISCOs, the distribution companies. The other day, we were discussing the story that they had capped, limits. They have provided limits for estimated billing. And, I guess this is to force the DISCOs to make sure that their customers get meters. And we raised the question then. The government had introduced this meter access provider scheme, MAP as they call it. At the end of the day, not much has been achieved in that regard.
I've applied for a long time now. I've been waiting. Nothing is coming out of that.
Where does the NERC leave the maps, the meter providers, when it says the DISCOs should now take up the responsibility of ensuring that customers have, meters, and that if they do not have meters by so time, then they cannot pay more than this amount.
No.
Now, even if the DISCOs were to import meters are not made in Nigeria, right? With coronavirus, maybe those meters are probably made in China. And the crisis of supplies from China at this moment, with the disruption in flights, with everybody.
I hope you are not trying to help these DISCOs. They don't want to supply supply these meters. If they want to do it,
in any case, even if they want to supply, where would they get the meters between now and April?
No, MAP does not mean discos should not do anything about metering. It simply means that it is not strictly the function.
The meter access providers are third-party providers.
Yes.
Yes. So the parts that will be played by discos will be to provide maybe necessary information.
The discos are enjoying estimated billing, Ruben. Well, they supply darkness.
That is true.
They supply darkness and collect money from you.
I know about all of that. I wrote a piece on it.
Yes.
You know, but the thing again is that this back and forth between the regulator and the electricity distribution companies, you know, could discourage investment, right? Yeah. If you want to invest in Nigeria, say in the electricity sector, there is a policy today. Tomorrow there is another policy. You know, it creates distortion.
I agree with you. There should be clarity in policy.
So and that's why I say, you know, better communication.
Yes.
You know, between all the stakeholders will probably help to address some of these problems.
Yes. Definitely. If we move over to the foreign newspapers, one subject expectedly is dominating the foreign newspapers: coronavirus. The Guardian, UK. UK warns against mass panic as race to halt outbreak intensifies. Fears of surge in cases of virus prompt rollout of new testing procedures. That's the Guardian. While the Daily Mail has the same lead story: NHS braces for virus mayhem. Suspected patients to be tested at home. Extra staff drafted into 111 helpline. The Daily Mail newspaper of UK. Health chiefs say everyone must wash hands for 20 seconds. One of the measures being put in place. Then if you look at, of course, the Washington Post, Trump taps Pence to lead in emerging coronavirus effort. New U.S. assessment. Of course, all over the world, because for the first time, new cases outside China have outstripped what is happening.
The rate is dropping inside China. It's spreading.
I think the rest of the world should be worried about this coronavirus.
Most certainly. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Efeni.